What's up everybody, Coach Mills here, coming at you with a brand new Overwatch video, and in this video we're going to be breaking down a brand new SOJOURN guide so that you know how to dominate with this new insanely powerful DPS in the right hand. So, we're going to break it all down, but the GameLeap website's the best place to learn and grind, learning Overwatch with ease, with in-depth tips, tricks, and so much more. If you really want to get better very quickly, do yourself a favor and go check it out right now, down below. Now first we gotta talk about abilities, and let's start it off with the railgun. Now the primary fire of the railgun is gonna do 9 damage per shot, and it's gonna have 40 ammo in the weapon, and you're gonna be using about 11 ammo per second, and it can headshot. Now it's a projectile, pretty fast moving, but you're still gonna need to lead your shots if you're shooting from very far away. Now, of course, while this weapon can definitely kill, its primary purpose is actually to build up your secondary fire, because every damage you do generates energy that can be used for your secondary fire that has the capability of doing burst damage, which will allow you to open up a fight and get key pickoffs. And while there are many playstyles with SOJOURN, playing a slow static playstyle centering around building up energy for your secondary fire by farming up tanks and even shields that also generate energy can be a great way to play safe enough but still output a lot of damage, and then ultimately find a way to get a key pickoff later on when you have that energy up. Speaking of the secondary fire can do anywhere from 1.3 to 130 damage, and that's without a headshot. So a headshot is going to be able to do actually 260 damage, which is way overkill. You actually only need to be at 80 energy in order to headshot a 200 HP character. So definitely keep that number in mind. You don't want to be trying to generate all the way up to 100 when you could already kill that enemy if you're at 80, but of course characters with more health, like tanks or even a character like Cassidy, are going to need a little bit more juice. And of course for benchmark, if you're going for a body shot to finish off an enemy, the full thing will do 130, and 80 will do about 100, or half the HP of 200 HP heroes. Now next up, we do gotta talk about the Disruptor Shot, 15-second cooldown, and it does a max of 210 damage if an enemy stays inside the entire time. Now, important to understand, it doesn't matter where they are standing, whether they're standing right in the center or on the edge, it will do the same amount of damage. So an enemy needs to be completely out of it, or else they're taking the maximum damage from the Disruptor Shot, and the Disruptor Shot will be able to kill all the 200 HP heroes if they're stuck inside it for whatever reason. So if the enemies don't have a lot of healing or no healers and they're stuck in a Graviton Surge, Disruptor alone will actually be able to kill them. Now, of course, we gotta talk about SOJOURN's ultimate overclock. It's gonna refill it in 1.2 seconds and allow you to fire off many of your secondary fires, potentially carrying a complete team fight, being able to get kill after kill. Of course, you still gotta wait for it to charge up to at least that 80 if you want to do that 200 damage with a headshot. So that's what I would highly suggest, but if you're just trying to finish off an enemy that's low, you can just fire away. Now, the last charge up is not going to dissipate right when your ultimate ends, so if you want to store it for a little while before it dissipates normally, then you can for that last charge up. You don't have to force it out right before your ultimate ends. Now, the last ability that we do got to talk about is the Slide. The Slide has a 7-second cooldown, and it allows her to be incredibly flexible with your playstyle. You can use Slide for engaging, Slide for disengaging. You can take an off angle, get out of a tricky situation. There's a lot of uses for this ability, but we're going to break down some of the big mistakes that you're making later on in the video. And if you keep making these mistakes, you might be dying over and over again. Now, jumping into 5 tips for the character. First, we need to talk about playing off your railgun. I know it's really tempting to run it down, fly in with your Slide, and try to kill an enemy, but you're going to be incredibly consistent if you poke and try to build up your railgun shots and play off those. Remember, you only need one shot, one headshot to connect in order to get that key pickup for your team. So don't feel like you're doing nothing if you're just poking the enemy and trying to build up that ray gun. Of course, SOJOURN's a very key pivoting character where you can pivot from that slow static playstyle that's playing around building up charge for your ray gun into a more aggressive one where you're sliding in as your team has more advantage and you're trying to clear the enemy stragglers. For the next tip, we do got to talk about the Slide. And of course, one of the key aspects of the Slide is that you can get to many high grounds as long as they're not absolute height. Something that's very important to keep track of is what characters on the enemy team can actually chase you to and from the high ground. If you notice that the enemy has very little vertical mobility, the high ground will be your safe haven, where you could easily use it as an escape. If you find yourself flanking or off-angling, caught behind enemy lines, if you can easily slide up to the high ground and enemies can't chase you, that will be an easy way to get out, and then you can regroup with your team. Next up, remember the slide cooldown is 7 seconds, so if you instantly engage with your slide, you might not have it in time to disengage. That's why oftentimes it's better if you're trying to make an aggressive play to push up without the slide or slide to one close location before you fully engage, wait a couple of seconds so that you have your slide to disengage when you need it. Another huge mistake that I see a lot is players jumping for no reason. Remember, when you're jumping in a static motion, that's the easiest time for enemies to shoot you. So make sure that when you're jumping, you're doing it intentionally and not just adding it to every single slide. Now for the next tip, we got to talk about the secondary fire. And a lot of people have been saying that they're struggling with hitting their railgun secondary fire shots. The first thing that I would tell you to do is be extra patient. It makes sense that you would want to rush these shots, but if you're going to rush them and miss them every single time, you are not getting a lot of the value out of it. You need to make that one shot count. This is also why waiting for static targets that are in fixed movement is the best way that you're going to hit it. So if an enemy is jumping or an enemy is flying through the air using a movement ability, that's the most likely time you're going to be able to hit that headshot. That's where all the Widow highlights come from, and that's where headshots are the most common. So sometimes it's best to wait for your key moment, especially if an enemy keeps doing it. Next up is crosshair placement, and this is something you can do if enemies are playing in close clusters. Spamming it down head level crosshair placement style is a way that you're going to be able to get a lot of free kills, especially if you're just trying to have a poke battle with the enemy, potentially getting a pick off by having proper crosshair placement and using it down long hallways or corridors into groups of enemies. That can be some free damage and potentially free kills. As a last important note, realize that firing with your secondary mouse button is going to take some getting used to. Not all of you are actually that used to it, so if you're initially aiming much worse than you do with your primary fire on most weapons, practice it. And I would highly suggest going into a custom games where you have unlimited energy, and then you can practice over and over again with that max charge and really get used to it. Now, the next thing that we need to talk about is the Disruptor, and this is one of the most powerful abilities you have to turn the tables on attackers. While it makes a lot of sense to use it when you're just poking or trying to set it up with the ray gun, one really powerful tool that you can use is using it near door frames as enemies are trying to chase you. This could be something that you can do if you go for an aggressive play, enemies want to chase you and you want to leave. Sliding through a door frame, turning and disrupting the door frame basically hurts any enemies that are coming inside, and you can spray them and hit them with the ray gun before they leave your disruptor, meaning you could turn the table on any of your pursuers very, very easily. And I think it's a really great way to get some free value and kills, and at the minimum, you're going to be able to ensure your safe retreat to your team. So it's a win-win in all scenarios. Now, I really want to ask the question down below. Are you having fun with Sojourn? And what big matchups are you struggling with? Definitely let me know how you feel about the character down below. And the GameLeap website's the best place to absolutely pop off and dominate. We're going to be remaking it soon from the ground up, so do yourself a favor and get in on the ground floor right now. Smash that subscribe.